I'm William Shatner. I've done a lot of things in my career, but this takes the cake. This is so cool. You, Joseph, today, it's all about you. You won the internet. Congratulations. It's exciting. It makes me want to celebrate. Makes me want to get up out of this chair. Makes me want to sing. Makes me want to dance. Makes me want to shout. Kick my heels up. Throw my hands up. Toss my head back. No, really, people should be shouting your name in the street.
Come on now. Sing that name.
Sing that song.
Joseph,
Sing it out loud.
Joseph.
I want to celebrate. Put it up in lights.
The internet belongs to you.
See, no one else deserves to be celebrated like you because you are the best.
Hi, this is Penn Jillette, Penn and Teller. Big guy does magic, smaller guy next to me, he does magic too. He doesn't talk that much. I want to talk about Joseph Jaffe is not famous. And Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Joseph Jaffe is wicked not famous. Joseph Jaffe is superlatively not famous, and for good and sufficient reason. I mean, maybe his guests are famous. Maybe his guests are famous. He gets some famous people on his guests, but Joseph Jaffe himself is not famous. That's the important part. You can have famous guests and still not be famous. And if you want an example of that, well, Joseph Jaffe would be a really good example. Teller would do a better job at a talk show, and Teller doesn't talk, which you'd think would be one of the major qualifications of being on a talk show and not being famous. What's that, Teller? Oh, yeah, Teller says, Joseph Jaffe, not famous. Love you. Peace.
I just want you to know that I've practiced this word about 20 times to make sure that I did not mispronounce it.
I have a question. Has anyone ever said with all due respect and then not followed up with a zinger?
His side of the bed. If I come in and I'm on the other side, he will move it. Yeah, that's it.
Which side do you like? With all due respect, you make a good point.
Cheery Oreos! Toasted Oreos!
Mute. He's muted.
I love what he's saying. He doesn't need sounds.
You're so small, squishing your head, Joseph.
You can.
Do it with me, Joe.
With all due respect, you really do look handsome, Bruce. Cheery Oreos! Toasted Oreos!
Look at you. You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're
How did I do
insane.
that? You just made the intro reel. Yes, you did. I mean, who doesn't want to make the intro reel of Joseph Jaffe is not famous? That's rhetorical. Everyone wants to make the intro reel. All you have to do is just be a little bit off the wall, not off color, but off the wall. You know what? Actually, screw that. Just be yourself. Be yourself, and you will go far on the show where I am decidedly not famous. But my next guest, Mr. Rand Fishkin, a man who captivates me with his hipster mustache, which is no longer. I went into the depths, into the annals of the Google. I lazily ignored his amazing bio page that has everything you need and more. His wonderful bio page where he spoon-fed me. He spoon-fed me with these amazing photographs of him. And yet, I went with the mustache. What did they say? Fear the beard. And I don't know, and stash the tash. No, I have no idea what the equivalent is. But he is still beautifully haired on his face. Can you say that? Haired? He's got a little goatee. He's looking good. He's looking good, and more on him soon enough. Rand, the man who he has a first name like a South African unit of currency. Only the difference is he's probably worth more than the South African ZAR, the Zuid-Afrikaanse Rand. And anyway, more on him later. We're going to talk about a variety of topics. He truly is one of the leading luminaries, thinkers, practitioners in the space. And he's nodding in the green room saying, you damn straight. I'm just kidding. What else can I tell you? Well, I can tell you that I'm producing a lot of content. I think that's what we content creators do. We like to produce content. I've started in the Discord server for Alpha Collective, the Collective Cafe. If you want to join us Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 a.m., all you have to do is just hang out in our Discord server, discord.gg/Alpha Collective. We manifest on Monday. We no agenda on Friday. We do a live book read on Thursday. We discuss topics like, for example, today we discuss memento mori. Soon you will die. It is inevitable. Villa Morgellus, or whatever the quote was, all men must die on Game of Thrones. But we discussed mortality and indispensality, this idea of being indispensable, but be humble or be humbled. And then I forget exactly what the spark was, but I do believe that necessity is the mother of invention. We decided to turn this into a podcast. So within 15 or 20 minutes of the show, of the Discord chat, the virtual coffee completing, you can now go to bit.ly/collective cafe to go, or even, because I'm fancy like that, you can use this QR code on the top right-hand side of the screen. Let me... And you can subscribe to the show. We will be updating it soon enough on all the major pods as well. So you can take a little bit of daily discourse in Discord to go with you. And just really passionate about launching new initiatives, new brands or sub-brands, but all really just focused, I think, on the same common theme, which is, and I'm going to quote Mr. Rashad Tabakawala, which is, you know, there's a saying that says the more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, Rashad put a beautiful spin on it. He said, the more you want things to stay the same, the more you have to change. Think about that. The more you want things to stay the same, the more you have to change. And really what he's alluding to is the fact that if you actually want to keep your job, if you want to keep your market leadership, if you want to be able to stay a leader or keep your position that you've worked, or your equity that you've worked so hard to build, you have to keep changing. You have to keep adapting. You have to keep evolving. And speaking of which, I will be delivering a webinar on, well, you know, when you watch this, it will be in the past. I've given the webinar. Where the hell were you? Where the hell were you? But if you are interested in a little encore presentation from my CES keynote called A Prescriptive, Proactive, Predictive, Retroactive Perspective, and why so complicated? Because at the end of the day, what do marketers and brands want? They want to know how to operate in tough economic recessionary times. Oh, by the way, they still want to be innovative and disruptive and change the game and come up with big ideas. So they are caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place, wanting to take risks, but not too many, wanting to play it safe, but not too safe. How do you find the balance? Well, I will be delivering that keynote soon enough. But now I will be delivering the seated soliloquy. And the seated soliloquy, as you know, if you are a regular on the show, is always connected to my guest in some way, shape, or spine, or form. And it's called Spine. So today we'll talk to Rand about tough decisions, about making decisions, about making choices, about, I don't know, deciding if you are all in on the Twitter train or whether you are marching forward on the Mastodon bandwagon. But sometimes we have to make tough decisions. Sometimes we have to be able to decide when the road does diverge, which path to take. Because, you know, as I said the other day, you can try and straddle, you can try and take both paths, but eventually you're going to be doing the split. And it's going to get painful, especially if you're of the male gender and maybe not as supple or subtle as you once thought you were. So what do we do when we have to make a decision? Well, as Yogi Berra might say, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. If you come to a decision, make it. Make the decision and live with the decision. Don't doubt yourself. Don't second guess yourself. Don't create what they call cognitive dissonance. The second guessing, that if only, why did I? If I had known then what I know now. Forget about that. Whatever decision you make it a clean break, not the break of a bone or a spine, hopefully, but make that clean break and embrace your decision. Make the most of the cards or the hand that you were dealt and move forward. Now, often I've said that the tough decisions that we have to make in our lives, when we make them, the moment we make them, it almost feels like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. You kind of almost know instantaneously that you made the right decision, but not always. Sometimes there still is that little bit of doubt, that fear, that anxiety, that uncertainty, the FUD, right? The fear, uncertainty, and doubt, as opposed to the FAD, which is the fear, the anxiety, and the doubt. I just got anxious about anxiety. So what do you do in those positions? Well, the answer is the backbone. The answer is the spine. And if you don't have one, as they say, grow one. But if you do have one, that's what you fall back on. That's what you rest on. That's what keeps you upright. That's what keeps you erect. That's what keeps you standing strong and standing tall. Your backbone, your spine, your values, your morals, your beliefs. That's what keeps us going. And that's what keeps us growing. So we'll no doubt have many tough decisions to make. My advice to you is make them and then don't second guess. Move forward. As long as you are moving and as long as you're moving forward, you're still in the game. And now someone who has moved forward in every way, shape, and form, including his facial hair. We're talking about Mr. Rand Fishkin. Rand Fishkin is a co-founder and CEO of Spark Toro, makers of fine audience research software. He's dedicated his professional life to helping people do better marketing through his writing, videos, speaking, and his book, Lost and Founder. When Rand's not working, is that ever? He's usually cooking a fancy meal for the love of his life, author Geraldine de Ruyter. Did I pronounce that right? I hope I did. De Ruyter. If you bribe him with great pasta or fancy cocktails, he'll pull back the curtain on big tech's dark secrets. Ooh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to mix the cocktail as we speak. Rand, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joseph. Good to be here.
I don't know which one to start with. Do we start off with the fancy cocktail or tech's dark secrets?
I mean, if you have a fancy cocktail that you can pass me through the internet right now over StreamYard, I will be extremely impressed.
I'm very simple with my cocktails. I like a nice gin martini. I like, I'm learning how to mix. I'm not much of a mixologist, but I am a really good consumer of the mixologist.
I think both are great. I've been working on my home cocktail program for a good few years now. Last night, I tried my first ever Singapore Sling, which is a challenging beverage to construct, and did okay.
I've had the Singapore Sling before in Singapore, no doubt. And everything, I've only been to Singapore once, and everything in Singapore for some reason is known by Raffles. Raffles Hotel, Raffles Bar, I think the business class lounge is called Raffles. I think I think business class is called Raffles. One day I'll even find out why. Except for the Singapore Sling. It's not the Raffle Fling, it's the Singapore Sling. So how did it taste? What is in the Singapore Sling?
Oh my God. It's an extremely complex beverage. The base is gin. There's pineapple juice, grenadine, Cointreau or triple sec. You need Benedictine. I believe there is lime juice, and I'm probably missing one other ingredient, but complex beverage. It's a shaken beverage. It is often served with a club soda topper. I didn't do that, but you certainly can. I use the Difford's Guide recipe. Anyway, I love going down rabbit holes of, I don't know, interesting bits of human culture and practices. I'm not actually that much of a drinker. I made myself a half a drink, and that's all I have. But yeah, I really like the culture around it, and I love the process of crafting things.
You made yourself a Singapore as opposed to a Singapore sling, or a sly. No, it sounds amazing actually, and it's making me lick my lips and making me want to go back to Singapore, which is an amazing little country. I remember in the Raffles Hotel, no doubt, just looking down at a game of cricket that was taking place, bringing me back to my South African roots. But that was a long time ago. That was then, and this is now. What people want to know is they want to know some fun facts about you. They want to know. We sent our investigators into the field, and they could come up with no dirt at all because you're an open book, Rand. The only thing that they could find is that you actually are moonlighting right now. You have a little side hustle. You're a creative director for a video game in development, tentatively titled The Snack Bar at the End of the World, which just made me think of the restaurant at the end of the universe. Tell us about this video game.
Sure. I actually, just before our call today, got off a call with the entire game team, which is, yeah, it's been a fun and interesting adventure. So basically what happened is I kind of during the COVID pandemic decided to execute on a lifelong dream of making a video game. And that is happening. It's a real thing. So there's a game team in Los Angeles, based in Los Angeles, called Akupara Games, that's made a number of great games. Grime is sort of one of their big successes recently, and they're an indie studio, so it's not a AAA, hundreds of people working on a project. This is probably going to be a sub $3 or $4 million total cost game to make, but yeah, getting to work with artists and level designers and game designers and programmers and project managers on building out this game world where you as the player will be a chef in a magical version of Italy, and you go out into the magical wilds and you fight monsters like an enchanted boar, and you defeat the boar and you get some pancetta or some guanciale and you bring it back to your restaurant, and maybe you cook up some spaghetti alla carbonara and you serve it to your clients at the restaurant, and you make some lira. We're using the old Italian currency, and then you can upgrade your equipment, your restaurant, the town around you, and go back out in the wilds again. So this is kind of the core game loop. It's still a long ways off, Joseph. So
wow, I love it.
Probably 2 or 3 years away.
Maybe if the name doesn't work out, you can just go with eat what you kill, or kill what you eat. It sounds like being the life of a writer, a public speaker, and a consultant. Sometimes you get very fat from the spoils of your labor, and sometimes you starve. But it's great. The Enchanted Boar. The Enchanted Boar. It sounds like also a children's story. How the hell did you get into that? Was it in fact connected to another of your interesting facts as well, which is being obsessed with Disco Elysium? Is that Elysium? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Joseph, I am embarrassed for you right now. This is shameful. You have not played Disco Elysium?
Should we just end this right now and bring me into
Off
the
you go.
Elysium?
You know what? I'll be the host of the show. You go play Disco Elysium. Yeah, no, I think that this is a video game that was written and created by an Estonian artist collective. They'd never made a video game before. Many of their projects are, I would say, somewhere on the political spectrum between anarchist and socialist, and they're also this game is deeply political and critical of all political theories. But it's a story of a detective who loses his memory through deep drinking, has lots of problems, and then eventually solves a murder of a man who's been hanged behind a restaurant, and it's extraordinary.
And he
One
looks
of
a
the
lot
best.
like
I
you,
believe it
actually.
won.
Did
I
you
think it won
notice that?
a Nebula Award for the best science fiction writing, and a game had never been even nominated into that category before. So it's an exceptional piece of work. After the first 15 minutes, you'll see what I'm talking about.
And looks a lot like you, right? Have you noticed? So let me ask, this is a silly question because I kind of gave up on games a long time ago when I realized that my little fat fingers could not even support the number of buttons on a console. Is it an app? Is it on the phone? Is it on PC? Is it on Mac? How do people even play games anymore? Is it
Yeah, so
PlayStation,
it turns
Xbox?
out for folks who are not in the video game world, the human race is no longer producing human beings who don't play video games.
I'm not
So
human.
Joseph, our generation is set to be an artifact in that way. I believe the video game economy is currently 5 times larger than all television and movies combined globally, and that is I think it's more than 10x in the US. So if you think to yourself, well, I watch television and movies, you can think, well, there's 5 times more hours, dollars, and time and people spent on games. And yes, video games are played on phones, they are played on tablets, they're played on consoles like Xbox and Nintendo Switch and PlayStation, and they're also very popular on PC and Mac. Disco Elysium, if you were going to play it, I like the PC version the best, but the Nintendo Switch version is totally workable. You can play it on Xbox. I think you can play it on PlayStation as well. You can't play it on your phone.
And of course, one of the most amazing things about the gaming industry, there's so many, but one of them has been Discord and has been the ability to actually have, it's the classic example of, we would always see the teenage child, the son, the daughter in their room with the coil of the telephone going underneath the door, and they would just be on the phone for hours. And now that is gaming. That is the fact that you're just on Discord and you're actually hanging out and connecting with your friends. And the game is almost secondary. It's almost tangential to the actual connection and the community. And it's just been a phenomenon in terms of how Discord came from out of nowhere, not only has become the communal platform of choice, but now within Web3 and within this new world of NFTs, etc., Discord has been also the one platform to rule them all.
I was not familiar with Discord being used much by the Web3 community, but that doesn't surprise me that it's true. I could certainly see that it's a great gathering place for small private communities of people who already know each other and have some connection around something, which of course the game universe has lots of that. I will say too, I think along with Discord, Twitch, communities like itch.io for developers, YouTube obviously has been huge for this, and TikTok and Instagram Reels are both massive sources of player discovery, right? People being, how do people find new games, discover the things that they want to play?
I saw actually, and I don't know the exact date, but let's assume it's somewhat recent. There's so much interesting innovation happening in the sport, in the world of convergence between sport and gaming. And what I mean by that is well, first of all, and even entertainment. I mean, you take Ryan Reynolds buying Wrexham, but more importantly, I just saw this morning. Burger King went and sponsored. I think they may have bought the club, but certainly they sponsored a lowly club called Stevenage, which, by the way, I've actually seen play in Hertfordshire. And so they ended up with a Burger King logo on their shirts. But the reason why they did that, and one of the reasons they did that, is they knew it was a direct path into FIFA, into the game. And so now, and then what they did is they created all these incentives for people to actually share screenshots of themselves celebrating goals, with this, for Stevenage with this. And it became the #1 team selected for career mode. And so they actually ended up creating so much earned media and impressions by actually coming in at the bottom of the barrel through a really smart way, but recognizing that what we crave more often than not is authenticity. If we're playing a game and it doesn't seem like real life, then it doesn't, then there's something missing. It's just a beautiful case study, I think.
Yeah, fascinating marketing. I wasn't aware of that, but I'm going to have to check it out because that's very clever indeed.
So you check that out, and I am going to be disco Elysiuming my way to addiction, but good addiction, healthy addiction. All right, so Mr. Rand Fishkin, let's get into some of the topics at hand. And, one of the things that certainly caught my eye, I mean, we'll try and end up with this fun topic of wine, but let's start off with this idea of moving off Twitter. You have almost 500,000 followers, and ultimately you've moved towards Mastodon. This is actually why I decided to talk about Spine, because I think it's incredible, and it takes a lot of courage and spine. And maybe you would say, no, not at all. Absolutely not. It wasn't even a hard decision. But to walk away from 500,000 followers in favor of starting fresh, starting new, starting clean, to me, that's pretty impressive. So tell us a little bit more about this path, this decision, and what the journey has been like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to be clear. I'm still on Twitter. I use it as a broadcast channel. I don't engage or interact there. Many of my comments, since Elon bought Twitter, a lot of my replies in my feed, I mean, I've blocked most of them hopefully now, but a lot of my replies in my feed are new people and sort of existing people on Twitter who Elon has appeals to, right? I think he appeals to a certain subset of individuals. We can see in the SparkToro data, right? So SparkToro is the company that I run, Joseph, and we have a lot of Twitter data along with 11 other social networks that we cover and provide audience research about. But we can see in the Twitter data, right, that the people who are signing up for Twitter, the engagement, a lot of the engagements that's coming from a certain group of people, and that certain group of people is not a group of people who I think are particularly valuable for my business, and they're certainly not people that I would like to interact with, right? They tend to be folks who they think January 6th would have been a great thing. They'd like to see Putin win in Ukraine. They would like to see a return to a sort of much more traditionalist way of life. They are not interested in diversity or equity or inclusion. Just not my crowd of folks. But Elon obviously has also made sort of a hard right turn in his own politics over the last 9 months. So no surprise that as he's acquired Twitter, he sort of brought those people with him. You can see Parler is on the verge of bankruptcy because almost all of their users have fled to Twitter. So, I mean, Twitter, it's just not what it was, right? It's not a place where I think people are doing the same kinds of activities that they once were. It's sort of a.
But it's interesting to me because you're backing up your assertion not based on opinion, not based on a hunch, but based on data.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, it's certainly the case that, if Twitter had 230 million odd monetizable active users, and many of those people are still on the platform, right? It's not that they've left entirely. They still have accounts. They still occasionally log in. But what's changed is the activity and the centralization of that activity, what the conversation is about. I use Twitter historically, right, to learn about interesting people in marketing. I used it to find interesting books to read and blog posts to read, to expand my knowledge about, the fields of entrepreneurial practices and endeavors, to meet folks like yourself, right? That this is my goal. That activity is much easier on Mastodon, and the quality of the experiences that I have there is much better as well. And that's also true for LinkedIn. And so basically what I've done is say, hey, rather than spending, I was probably spending between an hour and 90 minutes a day on Twitter, using it as both a marketing and broadcast channel, as well as a research and a consumption platform. And I've scaled that back to, 6 or 7 minutes a day when I cross post something to that platform and barely look at my mentions. If I see some particularly horrific hate speech, you can't report it anymore, right? Because Twitter's safety team has been all fired. But you can at least still block folks. Although it wouldn't surprise me if Elon's like, no more blocking. You have to hear their terrible opinions.
Well, also, and also Elon basically kind of suspended accounts that were then promoting Mastodon as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So for people that are new to this and trying to figure out the lay of the land, let me do a little bit of a TLDR summary. You have Twitter that has either stopped growing, or at least the makeup of the typical Twitter user has changed. Yeah. Used to be a lot of angry, self-entitled bloggers, and now it's a bunch of angry, self-entitled insurgents. Capital stormers, if you will. But you've seen these interesting shifts happen and now come back as well. I think people have always recognized that Twitter has a lot of anger associated with it. And
Absolutely.
So in a way, the anger is constant. It's just shifted from one group to another. Get off my lawn, get out of my capital, So tell us a little bit about Mastodon. And I've seen a few people like, Augie Ray, who's been on my show before, saying, hey, come to Mastodon. And I was like, another platform? But Mastodon is decentralized. I looked at my own account, and I'm not mastodon.social, I'm home.social. So I guess I'm sitting on another server. I don't even know what that means.
I mean, I bet you don't have the same email server that I have either, right? Which is also a decentralized network. Email works great as a protocol. It has for, 30 years more. And that provides no problem, right? I can email you at your Gmail address. You can email me at my SparkToro address. We can email someone at Yahoo. The email server makes no real difference. It's all using the same protocol. And that's exactly how Mastodon works. So anybody, yourself, me, we could set up our own Mastodon servers and use it. The good part about this, Joseph, is that as a decentralized network, you can't have a billionaire come in and take it over, or a private equity company come and buy it out and turn it into something that you don't want. If you don't like a server and you're a server operator, you can block that server from your server, right? You can say, whoa. All the email that ever comes to me from, whatever, Prince of Connecticut.ru, that it's really suspicious. I'm going to block that email server from emailing anyone. And Gmail, right, of course, and Yahoo does this all the time with spam. Mastodon can do the same thing. So Mastodon Social could decide someday that, oh man, gosh, home.social is hosting a lot of Nazis. We don't want that. Like, we don't allow that. That content's not legal in Germany anyway. We're blocking that server. And that's indeed what they do, right? So plenty of trolls and, folks have tried to invade Mastodon, and that activity is not allowed there. The beautiful thing about Mastodon, because the community is very small, very tight knit, and because it is a reaction in a large part to the anger of Twitter, it's a really beautiful place. People are just so damn sweet to each other. I mean, it is wholesome as hell. It's hard to describe. It feels like the internet before,
I love it,
the modern era, right? Where folks are like, oh, hey, check out this, what I use ChatGPT to try and figure out if the laws around fishing apply to this trout in this season. And people are like, oh yeah, that's a cool application. That's neat. Also, I didn't know you went fishing. We should go together sometime. It's like, it's that kind of stuff. It's, here's some photos of my cat. It's, here's, a beautiful picture of the woods out back of my house. It's just nice.
It makes me think of, Jay Shyatt, who who wrote, from Shy Day, and in fact, this was the impetus behind my book, Built to Suck. He said, "Let's see how big we get before we suck." I think he might have said the original words were, "Let's see how big we get before we go bad." And so, what you have with Mastodon now is it's so funny because I'm actually going to bring this into my webinar, because when I wrote Join the Conversation, I said this is now the many-to-many model. It's not the one-to-many, the shotgun approach. It's not one-to-one. It's not one-from-one, which is search. It's the many-to-many. We're all part of this conversation. But now I believe that we are in what I call the sum-to-sum. Small groups of cohesive, homogeneous, like-minded communities. And I think we see that with an NFT collection, or we see that with a mastermind, but we also see it now with Mastodon, with these small groups that are now they're like little islands. It's almost like, what do you call it? Is it the Philippines, or the or this group of like hundreds of these islands, all connected through bridges or through boats. But at any point in time, that right of entry can be refused if, in fact, the rules are not followed.
Yeah, and I think that many folks on Twitter, whenever they give me a hard time about using Mastodon or whatever, they're like, "Oh, it's just an echo chamber." You know what? I don't think that's a criticism. I think that's a beautiful thing. Go for it. If people want to be sweet to each other, and they want to talk about things that interest them, and they want to share opinions and beliefs around that inside a framework of what's allowed and what's kind, I think that's freaking phenomenal. I want that for the internet. And if you want to have your hate fest and your, Parler and Truth Social and turn Twitter into that, hey, you go right ahead. It's your company. You do it, man. have fun. I just don't want to participate.
Yeah, I love the idea of a good, or a good echo chamber, that we've almost we need to reclaim the concept.
I don't understand any of these. All of these criticisms, right? The criticism of being woke. See, that's everything about it seems like a good thing. I don't understand how it's an insult. Virtue signaling. Okay, so we agree that they're virtues, and that I'm telling you that I have them. What's the how is that not a good thing? And echo chamber is the same one.
Well, I'll tell you,
it's a group of people who agree about the fundamental things of, how the world should be, and then they want to share in a community around that. I don't understand what the problems with any of this stuff is. I don't know how culture managed to turn these into derogatory, perverted terms, but
I can tell you,
I'm not going with it.
I can tell you, and the answer, unfortunately, is marketing.
Sure.
It's and gaslighting and positioning, which is the ability. Like, I've always been fascinated. The words, for example, the words liberal and conservative, right? You would think, if you look at the dictionary definition, that liberal is a good thing, right? You want to be liberal, open-minded. Conservative, you don't take risks. But of course, they've become different things. Now, obviously, if you are conservative, you feel the exact opposite. And if you are not conservative, then and so what's happened is, I guess what it comes down to, Rand, is, as they say, words matter. Words matter, but actually they don't, because if you take the content out of context, they can become something that they're not, and in doing so can lose their original meaning and intent.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest powers that we've seen fascism exercise over the last couple hundred years, right, is this ability to take away the meaning from words and then use them in ways that are weaponized. Very powerful form of marketing, very powerful form of positioning. I actually think there's a lot marketers can learn from how this is done, right? These exercises in sort of cultural popularity are painful. They're hard to watch. They obviously have horrific ramifications on lots of people, but they are fascinating from a marketing perspective.
I found a quote for you that was connected to this idea of making tough decisions, which I suppose are not really tough decisions when they are the right decision. But this was the quote that I found for you. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. And that comes from Theodore Roosevelt. Interesting quote.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that it applied to him. I suspect I have been faced by many moments of decision where the right decision was to do nothing. So I might take issue with the framing of that, but I can see where he's coming from.
Well, that's interesting. Can you give me an example of a time when the right decision was to do nothing?
Sure. So, Joseph, I don't know how much you researched my background, but I used to be the founder and CEO of a company called Moz. Moz was maker of search engine optimization software. A lot of folks in the market.
Very well known, and bowing down to you, my friend.
Not at all. But it was a very big, influential company in the rise of sort of the digital marketing and SEO field. Many people learned SEO through Moz and the resources that were produced there, and a video series that I did, and this beginner's guide to SEO. Blah blah blah. Long story short, for at least 4 or 5 years, almost every time we had a quarterly board meeting, right? So the board of directors was basically the investors plus myself, and another insider from the company and an independent board member. And we would have these, get-togethers to essentially discuss the strategy and the future of the company. How are we going to get to what we had promised our investors, which was essentially a company that is doing more than $100 million in revenue and that can exit for, some large multiple. So, very, very high bar for what's considered success. And the meetings often focused on this idea that the SEO world was not big enough, right? That essentially the concern by the board members expressed to me and to the other folks at Moz was that, hey, we don't think you're going to be able to build a big enough company with enough revenue in this space because there's just not enough potential customers, right? The market is too small. This isn't a multi-billion-dollar market. It's a niche play. SEO is never going to be that big. So we think you should go after more different sectors, right? Try and build up from, hey, we help with SEO to we help with all of these other digital marketing practices. This caused the company a lot of pain and strife. And over many years, 2012 to 2016, Moz really did try and do what the board directed and go after all of these other channels completely unsuccessfully. Total failure. The right decision in all of those meetings was stop. Do nothing. Keep doing what you are doing. Because if we had, we would have been, I think, remained the market leaders in the SEO software field, probably been able to go public. It's on reflection, right, years after this, that now we can all look back and go, oh, we were so dumb. My God, SEO turned out to be an absolutely massive field with multiple public companies with, hundreds of millions of dollars. This is not just $1 billion field. This is a $10 billion field. We were idiots. We cost ourselves our market leadership position, and Moz was sold. Was that last year? 2 years ago? 2021, I think June of 2021, for less than, the valuation of its prior raise, which you can imagine was not a great outcome. Not very, very few happy people from that.
Also, I mean, in your example, which is obviously a painful example to learn, the decision that the board was passing down to you was the wrong decision. I mean, can you imagine? Decision. I mean, so wrong. Can you imagine, like, saying SEO is? I mean,
yeah. Essentially, the board was saying SEO isn't dead, but it's not big enough, and it was just completely wrong. And there was no amount of data that I could bring to this problem that seemed to change their mind. Granted, I will take full responsibility. I was the person, right? I was the CEO, all these years, and I was the person who initially made this wrong decision to pursue these other fields. So I should have.
But let's go back. Let's go back to the past for a second, and I mean, this connects with me in the most personal way because I think about my entire career. I think about digital. I think about the dawn of digital. I think about Web3 right now. I think about the fact that I'm always seem to find myself right at the at the beginning of the growth curve, right at the beginning of the journey, right before the mini chasm. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently? How would you approach it, knowing full well that obviously we know how it worked out?
Yeah.
But back then you couldn't never have known. You just had your gut, your hunch, your vision, what would you do differently?
I don't think that's actually true. I did not just have a gut and a hunch. I had data. I had what I felt, especially by, 2013, 14, 15. I had what I felt was proof positive that this industry was not only huge, but it was growing and that the opportunity was there. And I did not have the courage of conviction to stand firm against my board of directors and against the path that I had put us on. I stepped down as CEO after a rough bout with depression in 2014. And I think my successor, continued making many of the mistakes that I had started to make in the years before that. And I did not have the will. I did not force the issue the way I should have. And I shouldn't have stepped down as CEO. That was a terrible mistake as well.
The funny thing, Rand,
many things I do differently.
Yeah, but I just saw, that old quote, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." So, the almighty data. But it's funny, the word courage seems to be coming up again and again and again. The ability to stand up, the ability to sometimes stand down. It's hard. It's easy to point a finger and say, grow a spine, grow a pair, do whatever the hell you need to. But in a situation, in a confrontational situation, it becomes really hard to stay the course. For me, I sometimes see myself as Don Quixote, the madman, chasing windmills. And sometimes the self-doubt, creeps in, which is maybe I am, more mad than a scientist as opposed to the mad scientist. So, but the one thing, as I said in the soliloquy, is once you've made the decision, you can't go back. You may as well just move forward, and it ultimately shapes you into who you are today, which is the great Rand Fishkin.
I don't know, Joseph. I mean, I think about that. What was I at Moz for 17 years, right? A long time. Certainly, I think a reputation that still carries forward. Hopefully it's evolving with Spark Toro, and folks recognize that I'm in a different space. And I think that Lost and Founder has been helpful for that. But I have a lot of regret about that time period. And I don't think, I'm not sure I've fully forgiven myself for those mistakes. I can move past it, and I can try and do better this next time.
I'll tell you, listen, I'm gonna give you your flowers. I'm gonna give you. I don't have to give you grace. You have to give yourself grace. But the mistakes, on my grave it will say the quote: "There are two types of people: pioneers and settlers. The pioneers get shot, and the settlers take the land. Here lies a pioneer." Who probably were shot. And so it's become who I am. It's become my identity. It doesn't mean it has to be. Now with this whole Web3 space, I see things differently, and I'm determined to create a different outcome. But I had Dan Pink on my show. He wrote a book called Regret, and he's challenged me and challenged everyone to say regrets are good. Because by looking backwards, that's what moves you forward, as opposed to I have no regrets. Anybody that says I have no regrets are the ones that really haven't been able to come to terms with it. And you know what? Maybe you never will come fully to terms with it, but it has ultimately made you who you are and shaped you. And there will be more opportunity. There's no question.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. I'll knock on wood for that.
Well, here's something else which is, this is a piece that you wrote called "How to Measure Hard to Measure Marketing Channels." And there we are back to data as well, which is sometimes we have the data and it is hard, and sometimes it is clear, and other times we're dealing with, for me, always one of my challenges was the fact that I was being asked to defend digital or social or an emerging platform, and the bar was set so high for me, and yet I was being compared to television advertising that was based on the potential eyeball. I was based on all this ephemeral, potential crap. And yet, I guess my point, Rand, was that, you know what, too bad. Rather than try and drag, bring myself down, let me figure out how to bring, put the onus on them too. So how do you kind of look at this in particular? How do you solve this conundrum?
I mean, it's interesting you bring this up, Joseph, because what I suggest, a lot of what I suggest in this process, in this how do you measure a hard to measure marketing channel, is to go back to the kinds of metrics that people used, the kinds of tests that they ran to measure television, radio, print, magazines, this historic anachronistic forms of marketing that, today we're like, oh my God, why would you sponsor the Super Bowl? And yet obviously you can see tons of advertisers spending millions and millions of dollars to do exactly that. How are they measuring lift? How do they know whether they had a successful Super Bowl ad or not? It can't be the number of YouTube views of their commercial, right? That's insane. And this is fundamentally, I think, part of the challenge is that we're moving, as the web evolves, especially as the primary platforms that send traffic on the web and that own the web's traffic, which has become, more and more concentrated. The web used to be a very diverse place. It's now a very concentrated place in a few big players. And those big tech players have a massive incentive, right, Joseph? When YouTube sends you visitors, they'd really prefer that they'd prefer that they didn't. They wish that those people would stay on YouTube. Twitter wishes that everybody who links out would not, and would instead put their content directly into threads on Twitter. Every tech platform is like this. LinkedIn does this, right? Their algorithm prioritizes content that doesn't link out, all that kind of stuff. And as a result of this, all of the referral data that we used to get from any organic marketing activities, like the keyword that Google used to tell you people visited your website with, Facebook's referral string, which used to include like which post did it come from. Now most of Facebook's traffic is dark. So as a result, we're in a world of lost attribution. We know, you and I know, that when we, talk about products and services and they resonate with people and they have reach on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, whatever, we know that that is doing something for us. But it's very difficult to measure. It's become like television, radio, print back in the old days, where the only way to really know is you try it in some sectors and you don't try it in others, and you see the lift that you get. You turn it off, you turn it back on, you see the lift and the loss. It's weird times, my friend.
So it's kind of like I think Andy Crestodino was on the show and he spoke about the availability heuristic, that, that which is easy to measure is almost always not necessarily connected to the bottom line.
And Andy's exactly right. I've heard him talk about this. This is why 95% of all, so let's use search as a good example. 95% of all search marketing dollars go to advertising. And you and I know that less than 5% of all the clicks on search go to any of the ads, right? 95% of the clicks are in the content. So what gives? Why are we spending the overwhelming majority of our dollars on, because it's easy to measure. Because Google gives you exactly all the data you could ever want if you just pay them. And they give you none of that if you don't.
So it's an acute laziness, and I think what you're saying in a very interesting way is if you can't beat them, join them. Maybe what we need to do is go back to the basic and the foundation, prove that, and then build, as opposed to try and maybe overcomplicate or over engineer. Is that accurate?
I mean, you can see that. So, you know, the blog post that you shared there, right? How to measure hard to measure channels. It does walk through a methodology that you can use to essentially take the, you know, vanity metrics that many of the big tech players will provide you with, and to use lift over time, and to watch branded search and all these other kind of things, to build models to try and estimate the value that you get from these hard to measure organic investments. And at the end of the post, one of the things I say is, I don't do any of this shit. I don't, not because I don't know how, right? Clearly it's possible. In fact, I show an example using SparkToro, and I talk about how difficult that was to build, but because I don't believe it's worth it. I think, look, maybe this is hubris, but I think that Amanda and I, my colleague at SparkToro, my VP of marketing, I think that we're good enough at gut feeling our way through what works and what doesn't in the marketing world, that we can make, we will do better even if we make a lot of failed investments in terms of our return on investment, in terms of our time spent, in terms of the value of that time, if we just use our gut rather than try and build very sophisticated models around incredibly hard to measure stuff. Now, we're small. You know, if you're doing 100 million plus revenue annually on the internet, probably makes sense to use these hard to measure attribution models, but I'm not going to bother. I'd rather just do the things that I want to do serendipitously.
And I think that also does come back maybe to the idea of the best thing to do is the right thing, the second best is the wrong thing, and learn from it.
Yes,
and,
there you go.
And the worst
now
thing is
I like applying that quote to exactly this problem. Perfect.
There we go. We've come full circle as well, and it's so interesting because I didn't think we'd end up at the place, this idea of trusting your gut, and you know, and you know, that gut means something. It's not.
Yeah, it's difficult because I think that you know, whenever you see the curve of knowledge to competency, right, and when you have very little knowledge, you think that you're very competent, but you're very incompetent. And then it suddenly drops, right? At some point, when you reach a certain amount of knowledge, you realize how incompetent you are. And then slowly you get back to a place of very high levels of knowledge, very high competency, and a moderate understanding of your own ability to contribute in a field. And yeah, I see this play out constantly, right? I see the same experience that I had going through my 20s and 30s, and you know, in my career, and what I believed about my own competency versus what it actually was, and that changing. And now I think I have a pretty good gut. In fact, it's not just that I think I have a pretty good gut. I have a good understanding of where my gut is weak and strong. I know that I will make bad decisions around this, and I need to find help, and I can't trust myself on it. And I know that here I generally can, and those and everything in between. I think it's kind of a great thing to develop.
Yeah, I would say you've arrived. I would say this is what people spend their entire lives trying to know thyself. You know,
yeah.
And I love the fact that you've added a concept. Well, first of all, remember the quote, people rise to the levels of their own incompetence. It helps when you're actually aware of when you're competent and when you're incompetent and when you're confident. And so, you know, what is that saying, that the most dangerous clients are the ones that are the people that think they know what they don't know. You know, it's being confident in incompetence. It's the worst scenario.
Absolutely. This is one of my biggest fears creating a video game, right? I'm making a video game for the first time. I'm, you know, designing it and working with the team, and God, I am terrified of assuming that my, you know, knowledge of software engineering and marketing is going to make me think that I'm good at this thing. And so I've tried my damnedest to recruit a team of people that I believe have competency in the areas where I don't, and then listen to them. Even today on the game call, you know, I had hey, should we redirect our efforts around the demo to this portion of the game? And throw out a bunch of the schedule that we were going to do. And the game team held me back from doing that, right? I said, hey, I don't know what I'm talking about here. So I need to rely on you. I need to count on your competence in this field that you know well, and trust your guts, not mine. And the only thing that you can do there is have a really good gut around who to trust, right? And how to listen.
This is kind of like philosophy 301. I'll tell you why, because now we're talking about trust and trusting your gut and gutting your trust, right? In a way. But also there's a beautiful juxtaposition. There is a humility and almost the fear of imposter syndrome on the one side. But what you have that they don't is the gut. What they have is the experience and the knowledge and the expertise. What they might not have is the gut. And I'll tell you, I'm here to say, trust your gut and don't stop trusting your gut. And because you have the humility to know what you don't know, and not to profess otherwise, the other thing is, and I've always believed this, is the childlike, the innocence, sometimes the ignorance, if it is well channeled, is the magic. Because you ask the questions no one would ask. Why? Because you're not jaded, you're not skeptical, you're not blinded, or almost, you're seeing something so clearly that other people might just completely look over because it's so common to them. Diane Arbus once said,
this is, I think, one of the most true but heartbreaking things out there is that many of the best creations in our world, right? Many of the best books, many of the best, not all, certainly not all, many of the best songs, many of the best movies and films and television, best podcasts, best companies are built by first timers, right? I mean, Microsoft was Bill Gates's first company. There's a lot to that. Google was Larry and Sergey's first company. I constantly have this fear, like, oh my God, what if I never do anything as good as Moz again? And it wasn't even a success, that scares the shit out of me, man.
Well, let me tell you something now. I'm telling you this now. I have been exceptionally gutty at telling people what their next book is going to be.
Okay.
And your next book, please look out for Rand Fishkin's next book, which is a international bestseller. Trust me on this one. It's called First Timers. Seriously. Like I've blown smoke up a lot of asses on this show, but not this time. Brilliant.
I like that. I have been looking for a title to the follow-up to Lost and Founder.
This is brilliant. I'm telling you, if you can prove that, and I think you can, because you trust your gut and your gut is right. This idea of going where no founder has gone before, that's your subhead. Mm-hmm. Going where no founder has gone before. I just send me a signed copy. That's all I want, or let me kind of endorse.
I think I might have to give you some credit here, right? Because I mean, SparkToro it's not my first company
tomorrow,
but it is built in a way that no other tech startups are built, right? It's not. It's just done completely differently. And obviously, Snack Bar, the video game is a very first time thing. And I do agree with you. I think there's something really beautiful about being able to bring a childlike wonder sense to a new field, to being able to see with fresh eyes, but have that, what did you call it? Competent humility.
Yeah, why not? I mean, competent humility, or as opposed to humble. Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. That I'm writing that down now. Competent humility. Yeah.
I think we got to write a blog post about that, because that is.
Let's do it.
That's the goal.
Yeah, let's do that together, and then let's go and celebrate with some fake wine. We don't have time to discuss this, but is wine fake? I will just tell you my 2 cents is that I once heard that, first of all, don't buy any wine under $10, but the sweet spot with wine is about $15 to $25, and anything over and above that, you're just paying for the brand name. So I don't know how that fits in with the idea of, is wine fake?
So I think the fascinating part about this article and the fascinating idea that it brings to mind for me is basically that you can transform the taste of wine based on how you tell someone the story of what they're about to drink or what they have drunk. And
Beautiful.
I find that the article makes a bunch of points around how, oh, this means that, wine is completely fake, right? That there's no actual product here. When you take a sip, like what you're able to sense and the enjoyment that you get is a falsehood. And I think that's actually a beautiful thing. I think the fact that you can tell a story and someone can get so much more enjoyment out of a bottle of wine because of that story, that's the heart of marketing to me, right? The heart of marketing is not just, I'm going to sell you this thing. It's by telling you this story, I am going to make your experience better. This product is a $10 bottle of wine, and you're going to enjoy it more than you've enjoyed $100 bottles of wine because of the experience that you have around it. Sign me up. Like, put that in my veins. I want it all day. I want it for everything in my life. I want to know the crazy story about how this song was written. I want to know the crazy story about how this cocktail was first invented. I want to know the wild details of how this software product came to live. I want to hear about why Mastodon is so weird and decentralized and it's tough to sign up for it the first time. And bring it on. Bring it on, because it makes the product better.
It does. That. And, I just came back from South Africa. We went wine tasting at the estate of Boschendal, and the whole thing is just an experience where you find out about everything and the way the grapes were made and the temperature, etc. We all love and need stories in B2B. They say people don't care much you know until they know how much you care. Rand Fishkin, I think we could... First of all, I know we could talk forever, but now we have a blog post and a book to collaborate on. I asked Rand what he wanted to promote, and he actually wanted to promote somebody else, which is competent humility, if you will. Liz and Molly's No Hard Feelings and Big Feelings. It's funny because I reached out to them and I said, hey, why don't you come on the show? They paused. They said, we're not taking on any new projects now, but they did say, we love Rand. And so maybe you might have to put in a good word for me. And I reached back out to them and I said, like, if you reconsider, I promise you'll have as good a time as Rand had. And then I looked at the book and I said, but no hard feelings. Because it's just consistent, right? Take the emotion out.
These are great books, right? All of us bring our emotions to work, some of us in healthy ways, some of us in not so healthy ways. I've certainly been plenty guilty of that. And these books are about how to bring health and happiness to your work with your emotions. I find them outstanding, right? Just tools that make professional life better.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm going to go out and buy No Hard Feelings, because I've struggled my entire life and professional career to sometimes my feelings, my emotions get the better of me, and I don't burn bridges, I blow them up, and it always comes back to bite me in the butt.
You and my wife share this in common. She often says, I would set myself on fire to make one of my enemies uncomfortably warm, and
I wouldn't even pee on them. But that's another show and another story for another day. This has been the one and the only Rand Fishkin, co-founder and CEO of Spark Toro, creative director, and Disco Elysium. What are you, zealot? I don't know, etc.
Enthusiast? I don't know.
Enthusiast. Let's say
devoted fan.
When you don't find him reading Liz and Molly's No Hard Feelings and Big Feelings, you can follow him on Instagram. You can watch him on the Twitter, but if you really want to engage with him in a beautiful echo chamber of love, do it on Mastodon. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. And of course, look out for his best-selling book, wherever books are sold, called First Timers. I'm fairly certain that when it comes to first timers, probably no one is as great as Chuck Norris. And this is what Chuck had to say about you today, Rand. And we will be back soon when? I don't know. Just trust your gut. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.